Hello and welcome to the last lesson on building an in-home studio or how to record in an in-home studio. Today we're talking about how you record using a full-on recording system. Okay, as you can kind of see in the Logic system that we have going, we have a lot more tracks than we did before. We have individual mics on everything. The snare drum, bass drum, toms, hi-hat, 2 overhead mics, which I'll show you all that stuff in just a second. And then we have mic cords from each one of those going through what's called an audio interface. What an audio interface does, it takes that signal and it converts it or streamlines it into the computer. Usually if you're trying to put that many individual microphones, you won't have that many plugs on your computer. So you need an interface to plug everything into, and then there's just one plug that goes from that into your computer and sends all those signals for you. So let me show you the setup that we have going here mic-wise, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so here is the kit that we've been using. It's a one of the kits that I have. Really like it, kind of cool color. So if you can take a look, sorry, got a lot of stuff in here. What we have is we have microphones on every single drum, bass drum, there's a snare drum mic, 2 tom mics with a mounted one, floor tom mic. We have an individual microphone for the hi-hat, and then we have 2 overhead mics. Now what that's going to do for us is give us a very clean sound from each of those sound sources, whether it's the snare, the toms, the overhead mics. It's going to pick up a little bit of everything, but on those individual mics, it's going to give us a little bit more control over the sound that we hear. So other than the mics, this is what the mics are going into. It's called an audio interface, and the top, which is the bottom one there, it's made by Focusrite. It's a Scarlett 1820, which means it has 8 inputs for microphones. And then on top of it is what's called it's a Digimax D8, which essentially what it can do is it can extend how many inputs you have. So with the 8 from there, you can have 8 additional more with that Digimax. For this one, you only use an 8, so we only kind of needed the Focusrite, but everything, all the mics are going into that, and then there's one cord that goes from the Focusrite into the computer, which allows us to have all the individual things going with just one cord versus 8 trying to fit into the computer. So in this next time through, we'll be able to kind of manipulate the sound a little bit more to make it a little bit more professional sounding. Okay, and we're back. You just heard the combined sound of everything. We're going to take a look a little bit at it together right now. This is going to be the first time I'm listening to it, all combined and everything. What you're going to hear is a little bit of EQing that I'm going to do with it, that we're going to do with it now, and that's what I'm going to combine into the video that you see while it's being performed. So let's take a look at it by itself first. as you can tell kind of immediately, the sound is a little bit more refined, right? You hear each individual drum, each individual cymbal a little bit more clearly. Kind of messed up there a little bit. It's all right though. So what we're going to end up doing with it now is we're going to kind of do the same thing that we did before, and we're going to EQ it. Now what you can do with each individual channel now is you can EQ it the way you want. We can do a general EQ if we select everything, and we can hear how that's going to sound. If we select everything, we can go back to that refresh drums that we had on everything else, and let's take a look at what it sounds like for that when we kind of do it as everything. Doing that on its own didn't really do much. Refined it a little bit, but not quite what we would want it to be, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at everything, and we're going to kind of EQ it on its own. We'll do, what kind of snare do we want? We'll EQ it for just standard snare for the snare drum, for the bass drum, we'll just do standard bass drum, standard kick. We'll try standard, is there a standard tom? No. There's just high tom, which we have, that's the 10-inch. We can do medium tom for the 12. We can do low tom or floor tom for the 14, which is a floor tom. Hi-hat has its own standard EQ hi-hat, and then overheads we'll just kind of do overhead mic EQ, and that just kind of gives us a broad sampling there. And we'll do that for both of them. Make sure I did the right one. Yeah. So now that we have all that stuff EQ'd, let's see if it changed much after, see if it changed anything and if we like it a little bit more. So just by adding some of those filters and some of those EQ filters, we automatically kind of changed what we needed to do there. It punched up the drums a little bit more, it EQ'd them, brought some of the wobbliness out of some of them, the highs that we may not like, the lows that we may not like. Still that mess up there, but it's okay. Yeah. Live performance, that happens. But it kind of overall just brought the sound a little bit more refined to what we want it to be, right? We didn't have to mess with the EQing too much because in this program and a lot of other programs, it has that built in for you, where it has a standard EQing that you can just apply to it and it will make the drums immediately sound better. Now, if you're doing not drums, if you're doing another instrument, if you're doing your voice, there's definitely EQing that you can do for that as well. We'll take a look at one of them. It won't really apply to what we're doing, but there's EQing for voice that, if you can kind of see, there's all these different ways that you can EQ the voice to make it refresh a little bit or to make it a little bit clearer on certain things, whether it's a female voice, a full choir, a male voice, just anything you kind of want to do with that. That's a little bit more of like the professional-ish home studio that you can do. And realistically, it's not, I mean, it's expensive, don't get me wrong, but compared to a full studio, if you wanted to do this at home, instead of buying like the professional stuff that a full studio does, you can definitely do that and do this and get some really great products out of it, really great finishing songs or albums that you want to do. So that's kind of a quick overview over the past 3 lessons of the different types of ways that you can record at home. I utilize different ways of recording at home through these 3 different ways pretty much every time I record. Sometimes the instrument that I need, it's better to do a single mic. Sometimes it's better to mic up the entire drum set. Sometimes the built-in microphone actually does work pretty well. So if you have a computer at home that has this type of software, like I said, if it's a Mac product, GarageBand is pretty much standard on it. If you have a PC or if you don't have a Mac, Audacity is pretty easy to download as well. And you can kind of make your own music a lot easier. Okay? So that's it for the in-home studio lessons. Now that we have kind of talked about everything, make sure that you are writing your reflections for each video so that we can kind of progress a little bit more and see if there's anything else that you guys want to learn in terms of recording or producing music. Okay? So that's the end of the lesson. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.